Aloha, this is Samana with Unconventional Insights. This is podcast 51. I'm doing this on parents and children. So, my mother just had surgery yesterday on her hip. She's been in pain for years and procrastinated, and finally we talked her into doing this, and she's in a different city from me. She's high risk, and we have COVID and all this stuff going on. And here I am, like so far away, and it's not convenient to get on a plane because I'm afraid of all this virus stuff. And so I went and walked Town Lake, and I found myself like with tears and trying to just be present and breathe and bring soothingness to myself while she was in surgery, and praying for her and praying, that the doctors and all her attendants were aligned with her, and everything I knew that was within my scope. And then I started thinking, there must be so many people around the world in a very similar situation to me, that either it's their parent or their child, and because of COVID and just because of life and aging and various things, and that feeling of when you don't know if your family member is going to survive or not, and trying to prepare for a loss, and trying more so to appreciate what we have, and for all of us with our children and our parents that are still around, to just, this is a reminder, this podcast, that unfortunately life is short. So I want to share different relationship dynamics depending on ages and circumstances. We need to continue to evolve and change and grow in ways, learning new ways to connect as our relationships change, like allow them to be organic and allow them to continue to evolve, or we'll find that we lose that relationship, that we don't have I used to be close to my mom, or my daughter used to call all the time, or different things like that, and then wondering what happened. So I'm going to hopefully give you a couple different dynamics from my own experience and people I've counseled and things I've heard and shared and all of that. So when my daughter was young, very young, when she was first born, I had some serious issues. So this was before my solid meditation practice and before I had more counseling and healing and therapy. And she was my inspiration I came in as a person who I was always very deep and insightful. And my goal was enlightenment before I got pregnant. I actually wanted to be enlightened. I mean, I did everything. I was doing all of my work on that. Anyways, so she became my inspiration, that I wanted to get healthier. So I believe that we are all connected through genetics in our family line, but I also believe we're karmically bound to each other. So we bring in generations of dysfunctions and various things, including unhealthy partnership dynamics, control issues, depression, anger, victimization, sexual abuse, violence, lack of clear communication. I call it talking sideways, where people will squawk to everyone in the family except the person they have the issue with. And I was in a family like that growing up, and I believe I'm such a crystal clear communicator because of that, because I saw it was crazy making. So I am choosing to do my work, and at that point I chose to do deeper work than I ever thought possible, because I didn't want to pass that karmic torch on to my child and to my grandchild. When she was born, I'm like, okay, I thought I did a lot of work, but there was more to do. So my work literally almost killed me. while trying to clear and cut through the unconscious mud of life. Yet my daughter motivated me to work quicker after she was born, quicker and more like precisely. So I am not afraid to go into dark areas or uncomfortable, and I'm not afraid to do it alone. Yet I have found having strong support in my life with a good counselor that I could relate to at different times in my life, with my meditation teachers that brought lots of strength to me, and various family members or friends at times. So, due to my background, I found that avoidance and not talking about an issue was more toxic and scary than confrontation. So many clients that come to me in partnership or with family dynamics or at work or whatever's happening in their life where they're feeling frustrated or like a victim or they can't move forward is because they're afraid to speak clearly and confront. Now, when you confront someone, you don't need to be aggressive to them. And I don't advise ever doing it when you're charged. I advise doing it when you're clear and when you could speak from an open heart and clear dialect and be specific and not emotional and not dramatic, and kind of summarize it and bottom line it, so that they could actually hear it. So I adapted an attitude of, for anyone, tell me anything. Eventually I will accept it all and integrate it. But to hide something from me, I don't trust. There's no way I could trust someone. So it became about unearthing everything hidden under the rug. And of course I'd be a counselor someday, and a great counselor, because I go right to the bone. Any of you that have experienced my counseling techniques? Yes. It's amazing. I had someone just coming to look at my house to rent a room, and I'm like, what do I have to lose, right? Like, I went right to it and said a statement that I could see was a little shocking. He took the room anyways. So, okay. So back to when my daughter was just turned 2. I was running 3 businesses. I was married to her father. It wasn't the greatest partnership. And I was coming from a background of a lot of anger and rage and various things. So I didn't want to do that in front of her. So I would have her with her father, and I would go in my car and ride around the block, and I would scream at the top of my lungs. I found that at that point in my life, I literally had 20 minutes to myself twice a day when I drove to work and from work, and that was it. And usually I was like tasking in my mind of what I have to do the second I walk into work. So I didn't have any personal space. And for any of you out there with this COVID, where you're confined to working at home and you're not even able to do that drive or have personal space, so much compassion for you. I get this. This is a phase of life. So at this point, I didn't have the skills to not be angry and to express in a healthy way, as I often felt my life was filled with duty and responsibility, and nothing was about what I wanted or what I needed. So that wasn't an option because I had so many responsibilities. So driving in my car and screaming until I emptied out was all I knew. So I'd get out of my car, I'd see that little blonde angel saying, "Are you done screaming, Mommy?" And each time I would do different rounds of counseling in my life when I found someone I trusted, and the various silent retreats. And with all of that, I learned that as my daughter got older, as she could understand things, I would tell her. So there were a couple things I want you to know about healing, any type of healing, any abuse, anything that happens to you. If there's a couple components that will cause total healing. If you are able to express it, so you need to share it with someone you trust. And also you need someone to hear you and validate that they heard you and acknowledge, I'm sorry this happened to you, or that sounds horrible, or I see that was so challenging for you. So there's no doubt, there's no questioning. And I've said this in other podcasts, but this is so important that it's worthy of saying again. So for my daughter, I had enough health to me that, and because I was in the healing arts industry and schools and counseling and doing clients and working with clients and stuff back then and teaching workshops. So, but I seemed conscious to that group, but I had so much further to go. It's amazing how we keep evolving. Anyways, so I would tell my daughter, I miss being with her, yet I'm learning to be a better mommy. That was a phrase that I learned to do because I wanted her to see. And then as she got older, I would say to her, do you see every time I come back from my retreats, do you see that I'm changing? Do you see that I don't get angry or impatient or any of those things? And she'd say yes. So I wanted her to actually see that when you do your tools and your self-work as she got older, that it really does make a big difference. So the point of having the intention and the desire to believe you can find a healthier way to be, that is what's necessary to start to change. So finding a resource of a counselor that can create safety, support, and clear reflection is the goal to help you get through this. It's very hard to do this alone, and it's not fair to put it on your partner or your good friend or family members. It's better to have different faces and reflections and where you just go and it's not a personal thing. So for my daughter, as she grew up and she could understand more, I'd share that this must be scary when mommy gets angry. And I would tell her this isn't about you and it's not okay behavior. Because I didn't want her to think, and every time someone around her, or her father or her friends or anything, when something would happen and she'd share it with me, I'd point out how that must have felt bad and I'm sorry you got scared or I'm sorry you were disappointed and that the behavior wasn't okay and that we need to explain that some people will act that way and it's still going to hurt our feelings. But do we need to subject ourselves to that? That was a little more refinement as she got older. Anyways, so one point that I want to note is driving in your car and screaming with the windows up is not a solution, because all that does is it literally creates an acidic response in your body. It exhausts your adrenals and your nervous system, and you actually, your inner self believes that it's happening now. It doesn't feel like it's something from yesterday or before. It actually re-invokes it, so it's not any good. Anyways. So as my daughter got older, by the time she was 4, I was divorced and I had done much more counseling and so many more retreats and personal work and committing deeper to it. And I was finding that my greatest refuge and insights happened from going to these silent retreats that would be 7, 8, 10 days. And although it was hard to be away from my daughter, I understood that I needed this to reflect and review the pain that I've had from my past and to see that this is the human condition, this suffering, that we are all connected through our suffering. And that understanding helped me with my compassion for others and acceptance of others' ways. So often my clients would say to me that I know them so well, and it's as if I could read their mind, and I'd reply, I know myself so well. So, as a single parent of a small child, and I ran 3 businesses, 2 schools, and a day spa, and counseled and did workshops, so it was more than 3 really, but I always felt like a failure, and I'm sure some of you out there listening will feel this way. Whenever I would give enough attention to my daughter, my work would suffer, or if I gave it to myself, my daughter would start acting out. So I felt screwed any way that I went, until I went to this counselor one time that suggested being present in every moment. And again, I was a meditator, so I'm like, what does that mean, like in a bottom line sense? And he said, where you ask in the moment quietly, what is needed most in this moment, and really listen for it. Like I'd come home from work and the house is a disaster and my daughter hasn't seen me all day and I've been going from one person to the next for so long, and sometimes when I asked that question, so this was me connecting to my higher self, to God, to Jesus, to Buddha, to Muhammad, to whatever you believe, my inner source, my highest self. When I would ask what was needed, sometimes it was just to clean my house, and sometimes it was to be with my daughter. So I found that I got this timer, and I'd set the timer for 20 or 30 minutes, whatever you can do, and so my daughter could see it. And I'd sit on the floor with her so that she felt equal to me and safe and seen, and I'd let her direct the playtime, the whole playtime, for the whole 20 or 30 minutes. And that doesn't sound like a lot of time, but when I worked all day and I come home, that was necessary, and it was enough for her because I was never on my phone. I would never leave in that moment. That was sacred time with her, and it was better than most parents that I hear that are trying to do everything with their child as they're looking at their phone and texting and doing work things or trying to talk to a friend, or all this stuff is going on at once, and then the child's frustrated because nobody really gets you. So if you give someone 20 to 30 minutes undivided attention, I guarantee it will be enough, and be consistent with that. So then I got into a routine where as soon as I came home from work, I'd give her a big hug and a kiss and say, I'm so happy to see her. And then I would say, Mommy's going to go meditate. And I would do, when she was younger, it would only be 10 to 15 minutes. And then I worked up to 20 minutes, and she'd sit on the outside of the door, and I would tell her no interruptions. And I gave her those parameters, only if a stranger's at the door, if a fire happens, or if she's bleeding a lot. And afterwards, as soon as that timer was up, no matter what, I'd go out, and then I'd go into her room, and then this was her. I would praise her for giving me, allowing me quiet time, and how much I appreciated that, and that was so nice of her. And now we get Miley time. So she was learning healthy boundaries, how people need what they need, and it was okay. And as long as she knew if I let her meditate, then it was Miley time, and I sat on the floor and put our timer on, and then she could do whatever she wanted. Sometimes she wanted to sit on my lap and have me read her a book with her stuffed animals, and sometimes we went outside to the garden or play with the chickens and whatever she wanted. Sometimes tea parties, who knows. Anyways. So I started doing that consistently, and it doesn't seem like a lot of time, but if we were doing both those for 20 minutes, my meditation, and then that's only 40 minutes. Let's say I got home at 5:30. So we're not even to 6:30 yet. So now it's going to be dinner time and then bath time, and then you put them to bed. So it seems like a lot, but you really learn to prioritize and organize when you're a householder, when you run a business, when you have children. And it may sound like hell sometimes, but you're going to find it's the best times of your life. Anyways, okay. So as my daughter got older, when she started hitting adolescence and those hormones were coming out, she would bark back. And I would often think she was unnecessarily mean to me, because at the time I couldn't see the energy I was putting out to stimulate that. I just saw, here's this teenager, and why is she being mean when I give her everything she needs and everything she wants? So that was me not being so clear and conscious. So what she was doing with that barking back, with that kind of mean, hard line, was, I'm this strong mommy. I'm this strong woman, and I know that about myself. And she was trying to claim her individuality, and this was the only tool she had in her possession at the time. So it took me a while to see my issue was I was crossing a respect line. I was crossing a boundary of her, and this was not okay. Now, many people I counseled have said issues like this with their children. Why are they so mean to me? Why do they get so reactive and defensive? I recently heard a woman share that she was a step parent, and she felt she overthought everything before she acted with doing something. And I wanted to tell her that that's a blessed thing. So for all of you step parents that contemplate your words and actions before moving forward, you get praise, because many of us that give birth to these children, or our partner or our close family members, because we are so entwined, we forget that sense of respect. We forget, and we think that we are part of them, and we cross a line. And it's not okay to disrespect them. Their individuation is imperative, that they figure things out, even if we don't agree with it. So we have to acknowledge at times that we're entitled, and we can't be assholes and say unkind words or sharp things, and hold unspoken expectations of how we believe their life should be. Usually, with parents, I find that they overemphasize what they want their kids to be because of their own failures, because they don't want them to do what their own kids have done. I have done it. I hear everyone has done it. And I love when I hear another parent speak about their children and how their relationship is, because it's so clear to me. And with my daughter, I have to remember, if she was a client, how would I treat her? Well, a client, I have that boundary. I have that initial. I know how to speak with someone when I'm counseling them, when they need me. So now fast forward, she's now 27. So this has only been evolving over the last couple of years, to be honest, but it's better and better. I never feel she's mean to me. She's always wonderful, which means I'm always wonderful. And I'm trying to see her more and more. I'm trying to speak less when we're on the phone or together in person, because she isn't one to speak up, and I'm so verbal and forthright that I just really focus on having a lot of quiet space, that it's okay to be quiet together. And eventually she moves into that and speaks a little. So parents, at that point, when those hormones kick in, we're not supposed to be their friends. So wherever we got that, whatever hallmark we got that from, it's like maybe we'll be their friends in their late 30s or who knows when. But it will be on their timeline if and when it happens. And in the meantime, don't overshare with them. Like, they don't want to hear about our sex life or our problems or anything that we would share if we were to have a close friend. So if you don't have a close friend or someone that you can share with on that level, don't put that on your child. That's more work for you to do. So find a friend of equal emotional intelligence and take turns checking in regularly and share with them. I call it the buddy system. My partner was telling me about this, and I love this. So you actually find people that are equal with you on this level, and you schedule an hour once a week, if possible. And what you do is the first 20 minutes is just a catch-up back and forth, and then you set the timer, and for 20 minutes they're going to share and ask for feedback, and then the last 20 minutes you're going to share and ask for feedback, and keep it to an hour and really honor that. And if you honor that and keep it to 1 hour, then that's not too taxing on anyone's schedule, and it's more likely that you can do once a week or every other week. And you could have a couple different people, because everybody stimulates different parts of us, and then you get that out of your system, so you don't need to do this with your children. So back to the children. Any of you with your adult children, my advice, professionally and through experience, is to learn reflective listening. So I talk about that a lot on my podcasts, and when I do relationship counseling, we go over this quite a bit. and I have them do it together. So it's when they speak, you repeat back and you say, what I believe I heard you say was, and fill that in. And then you say, is that correct? Or did I forget something? And then when they're finally satisfied that yes, then you say, what do you need from me? Or what can I do for you? And they may not need anything. And it may have been enough just to be heard. And that's your only job as a parent. That's it. So there are phases, So there are phrases we can use after, like saying, I know you have a big heart. I know how bright you are. I know you'll figure this out. So saying encouraging words like I've often said to parents, our greatest job is to hold the image of them in their highest self, not to use our worrying mind and to put that on them. That's way too much. So, as for too much contact, calls, or texting, etc., I hear many of them saying, I never hear from my child. I'm worried about them. What's going on? Now, I made an agreement with my daughter and said, is it okay that I send these texts and these articles and these pictures and etc.? And she said yes. And it's almost like where you subscribe to a subscription thing and you say, okay, I want articles on politics, on COVID, on recipes, on things with animals and children. And so I told her, what do you want me to send you and what don't you want me to send her? Relationship articles. So I approved that, and then I said, I don't expect you to reply unless you really want to. So there's an agreement there. And when she does reply, if she does to one of them or so, I always have to look back because it was a couple days usually and to see what is it I sent and okay, that's great. But I don't have any expectation about that. It's open-handed. So the other thing is I've heard many parents say, but I'm worried about my child, regardless of how old they are, and I haven't heard from them. And I just want to know they're okay, especially during these COVID times and everything's so uncertain and there's more stress on all of us. So I say you could send a text and say that I need you to send me one emoji to know that you're still alive and okay. And let that be enough. And as soon as they send one, don't bombard them with these blasts back and forth. Just let it go. Or you could send a heart emoji back and that's it. And if you need to do that once a week, that's fine. Every day, that's a little neurotic on your part and do some work there. But anyways, these are just little tips I've learned along the way and helped others with. Now, talking about being adults, worthy adults now, and what it's like with our parents in our lives. So again, understand and respect our parents' generations and beliefs. And although they may be very polarized or different from ours, find a connection that works for you, for both of you. If it isn't politics or COVID, can it be about cooking or sports or whatever their grandkids are doing? Find neutral, safe topics and stay there. We are not here to change them, and if you wished they knew the real you, which I've heard this many times, show it to them, yet in their language. What I mean by that is, let's say that you need to be more connecting or emotional or introspective. So instead of, and they're not like that, let's say they're just mainstream. But you could say, hey, tell me some of your favorite memories when you were my age. Like, what are some things you remember? And then you could say, what were some of the greatest challenges you had when you were my age? Or when you were whatever? And how'd you get through it? And when you ask these questions, allow space and don't be in a hurry and be curious. So the phrase, to get to the king dresses the guards. This is what we're doing. It doesn't have to be only our way. We actually want to connect with them. And I used to feel this way with my father growing up. I used to think, he's not really emotional and stuff, and he's more bottom line. So then I learned to talk to him about business. So that we always had a connection on. We could talk about business all the time, and that's about all we talked about. But that was how we connected. That was our language. So, for instance, now, say that you like to sing. Instead of wanting to sing and you go and you sing your songs, how about asking what are some of their favorite songs and learning those songs and say, would you like to sing this with me? I learned this because you said it was one of your favorites. Now, my mother lives in Ohio, my birth mother, and I often treat her to Uber Eats when I can afford it, where I send her a cheeseburger or brisket, barbecue or something. And then we either call on the phone or we do Alexa show. And again, from anywhere in the world, in our country, you can send your parents or a relative or your children an Uber Eats and they will love it. You just put the address differently. Anyways, she loves this. It just delights her when this happens. So while I have her online, if she has Alexa show on, I've often been like making my masks or cooking something and still talking to her, and then she feels closer to me. She feels like we shared a day together, even though we're so distant. And then she's not lonely any longer, so it's beautiful. Now, for my father, we have brunch every Sunday. For him, we talk about politics, business, family, some of my Austin adventures. I love it. So we talk about a lot of things. We have a much wider scope. So I'm grateful for that too. So I love it. I'm blessed to still have both of my parents in my life. And we all need to find ways to accept that life is short and how best can we connect with those we love, and as often as possible, as consistent. I had one of my clients talk about calling their grandmother for her birthday and how it was the grandma just, instead of all these sometimes grandma's not the nicest person, they asked her like specific questions and then she started sharing all these old memories and it made her so happy. And she's like, I'm wondering if we should do that regularly. I'm like, do it. It's a great thing. Her and her sister called together, so it was a tag teaming. If you need a support system, get someone to call your parent, get your siblings to call with you or your daughter or something. And then it makes it wonderful. But find a way to do this consistently because now more so than ever, we have no idea. Like how much time we all have, what's happening out there. Anyways, and as for parents with small children, as challenging as it is, more so now with COVID and in-house schooling, remember that these years go faster than we like. These are the challenges. These are the best years of our lives, even though it doesn't feel like it right now, because they're carving us to be selfless, to be creative, to be highly adaptive human beings. This makes us better partners and friends. And we all grow up soon enough and they will be off on their own to their own lives some days. So you need to allow this process. You may not be contacted or considered for long stretches of their life once they move out. And that will be determined when we authentically look at, are we allowing them to form and grow through their own discoveries without our judgments or our filters of what we feel they should be doing? We may discover more about ourselves by asking these questions. And when we do, and we actually align ourselves spontaneously, they might start sending more unsolicited emojis out of nowhere. My daughter called me after a while, and I remember when this just changed, and right away I thought something was wrong because it wasn't a text, it was a phone call. And she's like, I just wanted to talk to you. I knew I was aligned. I knew I was what she needed me to be. I knew I was trying not to be her friend. I'm trying to be what she needs and just listening and reflecting back. And it's beautiful. So I'm bringing this to a close. I want to remind my listeners I do online virtual counseling through Zoom. I specialize in relationships, self-care tools. I work with teens, with family dynamics. I do a 30-day detox weight loss program. I call it Total Transformation. This is going to be an online class. I was charging $500 and I dropped it to half, to $250 a person, plus supplements, which I give you a discount for, and that will take you through the 30 days. It's going to be a 4-week course, 2 hours, an hour and a half to 2 hours per night. We're going to do meditation, we're going to do movement, we're going to check in, so it's going to be like a therapy session, and I'm not going to take more than 10 people. So contact me if you're interested in this. This is going to be Thursday, August 27th, September 3rd, 10th, and 17th from 7 to 9 p.m. Texas time. That's Central Standard Time. And you could reach me at 808-283-7587 or Samana, SAMANA, at spaluna, SPALUNA.com. Or check out my website, www.spaluna.com, and see what I'm all about. Aloha, stay healthy, stay wise, stay well. Blessings.